So we have a client panel today, People, Talent, and Transformation. And to introduce them is Susan Lowe, our very own Chief People Officer at Fuel 50. Take it away.
Thank you, Larry. So pleasure to be joined today by Dan, who's Head of Talent at Travelodge, also by Craig, who is Global Head of Talent and Organizational Development at Dover Fueling Solutions. And lastly, Serena, who is the Global Head of the Software One Academy at, of course, Software One. So thanks, guys, for joining us. So we are going to hopefully answer lots of questions for you around people transformation and talent, but also we want to ensure that we have time to answer your questions. So we're going to have a bit of a conversation amongst ourselves for the first 30 minutes, then hand over to you to ask these wonderful people the questions that you've got before we wrap for the session. So Craig, I want to come to you first. We've heard a lot today about empowering people and kind of putting the ownership in the hands of employees in terms of their career. So what has worked for your business in enabling people to own their learning?
So I think looking at it from a before Fuel 50 and an after Fuel 50. So before Fuel 50, we had gone down the route of taking LinkedIn Learning and using that as one of the kind of key development platforms. But what we found is the adoption rate was pretty much zero. Nobody was going in and really taking a look at the content and using it to develop their careers because there wasn't really a reason why, why am I trying to go down this journey? So we kind of hit the reset button a little bit, went back and thought about it. And instead what we decided to do is switch to having kind of virtual instructor-led sessions that were delivered online, that were delivered in their local language as well. But all of the courses that we picked, we tied back to our leadership competencies and we tied back to our culture characteristics as well. So now it meant it was a lot more powerful. It was tangible because we could talk about it in the terms that the organization understood. The great thing now is, though, that people are demanding more from us, but we're able to see from people's engagement with the site where they go and select all of these courses, which ones are popular. So now we can really target the things that are meaningful to everyone in our organization. Now that we're in a kind of a Fuel 50 kind of launch state, what it now means is people are going, that's great, you've given us all of those opportunities, but now we want more, which is great. So now we've got a thirst for it. So now when people are going in and going, I want to develop this skill, I want to develop that skill, this is where we're then going to look at how can we integrate other platforms that are going to enable that possibility for them to expand their learning without us having to do all of the pushing all of the time. So I think creating a thirst for it is a big deal, but I think any opportunity you can really relate it back into your culture, and I've heard that said quite a lot today about the importance of culture in what we do. I think that that's probably the most important part, is how do you make it come to life for people in a way that's meaningful to the organization as well.
What are some of those things that you've done to bring it to life for them?
So I think the great thing is being able to give them the choice of all these different courses, and for the first time them to be actually in their language, as opposed to it being we're an English only company. Actually, we've gone out and said, okay, what we're going to do is allow you to, we've worked with partners that are able to deliver it locally, but then for them to be able to say, okay, this is what I really like, can we do more? So they're communicating back with our HR teams that are really enabling us to do that, and really giving them an experience that also enables the opportunity for networking, because we talked as well, different people have said about connecting people together is just as important as going out and having, some kind of learning happening, is that option to connect with people globally as well.
Nice. So we've heard also, I think Anne mentioned it in her opening this morning, around kind of the current situation that we find ourselves in with the talent shortage and the talent crisis. I'm really keen to hear from each of you, and we might go to you first, Serena, in terms of the challenges you've experienced around that changing kind of ecosystem or landscape from a talent perspective, and what you've done to address that.
Okay. I need to caveat it by saying I'm coming at this from two angles. So I am the global head of the Software One Academy, which is our corporate university that I started with my team 2 years ago. But I'm about a semester away from a doctorate on the future of talent, especially in technology accelerating firms. So this is partly research and partly experience. As it's no secret that the gap between the demand for tech talent and the supply of tech talent is absolutely vast. It's also no surprise that it's a bit of a revolving door, right? Everybody goes from Google to Apple to Facebook to Microsoft to Google to, AWS, and we're just everybody's fighting for the same pool of resources. I know we have spoken about the Great Resignation. I think it was just a lot of it had to do with everybody was too scared to leave their jobs during the pandemic, so it was pent up for a couple of years. But I do like the idea, which the McKinsey's one, which even Anne spoke about, with of the global renegotiation. It's true. The companies right now are forming, merging, acquiring, growing, and even folding at a faster pace than ever before. Technology is changing at a faster pace than ever before. And if we're all fighting for the same people, what can we be doing different to source them, to develop them, and to retain them? And that is how I would summarize, I think, the challenge facing all of us today. So for us, two aspects. We have for new talent, which is what I look after. We look at grassroots level communities. We look at people from non-traditional routes of education. We look at people in areas, Software One's in 90 countries, where they wouldn't necessarily have that step into a career in technology. We hire them first and then develop them. So we don't do this thing where you go out and just give free internships and put a chip in their neck and then pray 50 out of 2,000 stick with your organization. It's not the way. You hire them first, you develop them, you make them sticky to the organization, and then you have tools and platforms like Fuel 50 to carry it on. Sorry, I can't remember if I answered the question.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
I've been waffling on, and I feel like I'm monopolizing the conversation. So.
No, perfect. And Craig, what about?
Yeah, so for Dover Fueling Solutions is kind of an interesting area to be in, because we've got centuries-old brands that are part of that, and you've got people that have been with the organization for a very long period of time. So some of those people now are getting to the point of looking at retirement, those lucky devils. It's how you then go about encouraging them to share their knowledge with the kind of the new generation of the workforce, of understanding the skills and the capabilities that they've kind of won over, hard-fought years where they've not had the technological platforms that are available to us today, and how to get them engaged in understanding, how this, tool is going to benefit them from, still developing their career, growing their skills, growing their capabilities, but then also, leveraging things like the mentoring side of the program to say, this is a great way for you to really transfer your knowledge and leave a lasting legacy, with some of these really big companies that have been around for so long. So
yeah. Nice. And I strategically wanted to come to you last, Dan, because there's no doubt with Brexit and COVID that a sector such as yours has been hugely impacted. So tell us what you've been doing.
So we have just under 600 hotels, about 11,000 employees, and just over 9,000 of them are hourly paid team members that do housekeeping, reception, and bar cafe. And then we had a head office for about 450 people that'll grow our revenue and then grow our estate as well. So we lovingly crafted a digital employee journey, thought about what we were going to do. I thought it might take 5 years, and then COVID happened, which massively impacted how we had to train our people. It didn't change the plan, but in terms of accelerating it, it's just been phenomenal. The concept that we would close our hotels and then reopen them when we'd never closed them before, and then through various lockdowns, reopen and close them. I think our biggest challenge is there isn't a consistent shared lived experience with colleagues from across the business, because you may have been furloughed, some for over a year if you're in our bar cafes with the walls around restaurants. And in our head office, different people at different times would have been on furlough or taking reduced wages. So that's been a challenge in itself. And then technology as well. So we had a big plan for technology, but I saw the slide that was put up by Joe and Lisa earlier, looking at all of the digital tools that you might need to run a really effective talent experience in programming in a business, and thought, well, we just had the LMS, and the access for the LMS was in the office where the manager was also doing the payroll and everything else. So we've had a big journey to just rapidly expand our digital tools, but with one caveat, that we must have the analytics and the insights that will then help us frame what we do.
Nice, great segue. It's almost like it was planned.
Yes.
Talent intelligence. I really want to talk about how your current state is in terms of talent data and what you think is really critical and important in that space into the future.
Yeah, so I think for me, and I think Anne alluded to it earlier on, is I've been very lucky to be part of the new Insights beta testing. And I think one of the things that grabbed me immediately was how we can be so much more intelligent about the learning and development opportunities that we put out there for people. As I talked about earlier, we've kind of gone down a slightly different route that's not as traditional of, how do we, train a workforce of 2,500 people, to do that as instructor-led training is pretty significant. But actually now we can proactively see where the areas of development are needed. And that will then influence that decision-making process when we get to the point of saying, hey, we would like to go and spend some money. We already have the data to back up what it is that we're talking about, whereas before it'd be, well, we've talked to a few people and this is what they're telling us. Now it's, no, the whole workforce is saying this is what's needed. And that's really going to help us, drive the adoption, the integration, and then the actually putting what they learn into practice, because that's the most important part.
Great. And for you, Dan?
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think for us, the talent intelligence is a bigger piece of the people data intelligence. So within my team, we've created a people insights and analytics team that look at what's the integrity of the data, how are we providing that information, how are we interpreting that data. And that's been the last couple of years to build all that infrastructure. And now it's about how do we use the insights to help us make decisions. We've used Full 50 as a career development program, but to understand we can gauge the knowledge and we can gauge the skills. The bit that was missing was motivation. What was it that motivated people? What engages were there? So to give you an example of that, we did it with our top hotel managers and our assistant hotel managers and asked you, what do you want to accelerate or decelerate your career? And they all said every single one of them wanted to accelerate their career. And then we asked, how ready are you? Not ready at all. And what's the one thing that you would like to grow? And you could see that from the data. And they said confidence. And I remember somebody asking me, like, what percentage was that? And I'm like, all of them. They all want to grow their confidence. When we dug a bit deeper and we asked them why, they said, because if I don't apply, I might miss the boat. And secondly, there's a big financial need for me to earn more money. So then we built our career program around confidence, resilience, and empathy. And one of my happiest memories is when we started to reopen our hotels and they were coming back to work. We were running the resilience program for all of our team members who wanted to take part, so that they could have conversations not just with their customers who had a slightly higher level of expectation around cleanliness, as you can imagine, but also their landlords that were demanding the rent.
I think both of those examples are of listening to your people. And I think I've heard several times today about the importance of that research and listening and going out and asking and then putting it into play. I'm keen to hear whether as a result of doing that listening to your people and then doing something with it, what you've heard, whether you've seen any impact in the culture or the engagement or the employee experience.
Yeah, we've certainly had at Dover Fueling Solutions. The main reason being is we already had in place a program for growth discussions to be happening already. So that was already a natural part of day-to-day life in the office. And certainly as we then had to move virtually during the pandemic, that's where we could build and grow on those conversations and those touch points. But I think now as things are returning to normal, what it really does mean is that the tool set that we've got inside of Fuel 50 are really enabling deeper conversations. So I think a lot of what you were saying there is like, how do you enable that? Well, for our people leaders, they're able to go to the tool set and see all of this information just front and center. They're not having to go to HR and say, hey, can you give me a report on this? Can you tell me about that? And, how do I identify if, somebody's a potential flight risk? Well, it's now all in one dashboard for them. It tells them everything about, the workforce and the people that are reporting into them. But more importantly, they now also have an area to capture that conversation that we can put prompts alongside. So again, for those early career people leaders, we're giving them the support so that they can feel they can have engaging conversations from day one with the people they're working with. And so that becomes really exciting and engaging, at least for me, when I look at it from a people leader's point of view. It's great to have that level of insight and knowledge about the team, so I can really have a more in-depth and engaging conversation.
Nice. Anything you wanted to add in terms of what you've seen as a result?
Yeah, I think the big piece we listened to was everybody was talking about health, so it's quite an easy conversation, not necessarily about your own personal health, but to say we'd like some help. And 2021 was a really busy year for us, reopening the demand, and I felt 2022 would be the same, that we'd have to go again, and that because the demand would still be there. So I thought there was a presentation earlier that was talking about the impact of doing something with your managers. And when we did Fuel 50, we could see that they were struggling to have the conversation, and that the data was saying that as well as well-being, they really wanted help to stay motivated themselves and motivate their team, but also help with how do I do my work in a new working environment without sacrificing my health? How do I be sensibly selfish? So we launched a program to focus on all those three things at the same time, and had some brilliant feedback because we felt that would have the biggest ripple as well.
Nice. Serena, I want to come to you now. When we were preparing for this, we talked a lot about that age-old debate, build versus buy.
Yep.
And you had some great views. Anne said when she opened this morning, buy is no longer an option, and shared two other alternatives. But I'm keen to hear your views on the topic.
Sure. If I could just end the
Of
talent
course.
intelligence thing, I'm dying to just say one more. There's another aspect, because all of this feedback is great and hearing back from employees and providing them what they want. But the other angle is business intelligence, and how you're linking your talent data to your business strategy. Because without that link, you don't know what skills you need, you don't know what skills to develop, you don't know what skills to hire, and you don't know what skills to promote. So I think there's that element there which a talent platform, Fuel 50, provides in spades, but without that being able to interpret to then your learning system, then to your performance processes, and then your HR systems, you're going to ultimately be measuring. In L&D, we call it happy sheets and bums on seats, right? and that's the most useless piece of data. For how many hours you spend on a system is the most useless piece of data for any business leader. So flipping it around to going, what am I getting from this data that contributes back to the development and furthering of business strategy? I just wanted to add that in.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
On your question, it's not. Yes, it is an forever debate on whether you build a skill or buy a skill. And when you're in a client-facing professional services organization like ours, and I was a client-facing learning management consultant, and one of the things we learned is you can't say you don't know how to do it. So for my sins, when I was with IBM, I started out as an SAP supply chain learning consultant. I didn't know how to spell SAP, but the client didn't need to know how to do that. I just had to be 3 days ahead of them in every case. So when you're in this position where you've sold, massive cloud implementation, and I'm not saying Software One can't do it, they are brilliant. I am saying you sometimes have a dearth of skills disproportionate to what, or a need for skills, disproportionate to what the scale of a client requirement or a project is. And then you're faced with that situation where you can't build fast enough, and you have to go out to the market to buy, and that's when the gigs bit comes in, external gigs. But internally, you have people, and we have people in the academy who are going off on these little development paths, finding out things that have nothing necessarily to do with their job, but skills that they want to develop in. And when your internal mobility then opens up to show them where they can use it, suddenly you've not even had to address the build versus buy solution. Your gigs has opened up that world to them. In the academy, we're trying to address a global issue in the microcosm of our company. Software One went public in 2019 and has done 21 acquisitions in 3 years. They went from 1,800 people to 10,000 people, and it's just the scale, and from 20 countries to 90. The scale of the complexity and the integration, the not even sure whether you do have all the skills, whether you should be building or buying. So what the Academy is doing is trying to approach it from a different way, from a very ground up way. How do we look at an untapped population? How do we buy them, but at not the price of a 1 or 2 year developer, and accelerate that development, accelerate that career progression through then giving them mentors, tech mentors, through shadowing, through opportunities, and then making them sticky to the firm and going on. So I do believe that firms need to stop looking at buy as your first port of call. But I do also think that there is a balance to be achieved, and that's mainly in terms of time. How long do you have in order to reshape and reskill somebody? And then we can talk about what the best learning is to support that.
And there's no doubt that a build strategy is a long-term strategy. It's a significant investment from an organization. But in your view, with your experience and expertise, what are the benefits
of a build strategy? They're there. The cost of your talent pipeline goes down because you're not spending on sourcing, you're not spending on headhunting, you're spending a lot less on recruitment platforms. LinkedIn Recruiter. Know each license cost. The cost of your talent pipeline will go down because the cost of acquiring, whether it's a business or a person, is always higher than the cost of internal learning. So we tried this with the Academy. My total cost per learner, I included all our salaries in it. And I still can show that it's about 2,500 Swiss francs. And that's still less than if I went out to the market and tried to get a cloud systems engineer with a years of experience. So there's always one last point to that. There's sometimes a train of thought, like a pinball machine. The cost of when you have an open role in the market, which is open for a reason, and you have about 50 other companies also saying the same role, like a cloud architect. Everybody's got the same, and you can make your ad as sexy as possible. There's still 50 companies looking for the same thing. And you find that role is open for sometimes a year, sometimes more. Always for a year, sometimes more. Because the number then you need is disproportionate to how many are available and you're hiring. If in that 1 year you had started investing in developing your junior developers, your junior systems engineers, your senior developers into that architect process, the role's still open. But you have somebody who is appreciating the investment in their development, who's seeing a career path, who's seeing an open role and internal mobility, and who's seeing that the next role comes with perks and salaries. Why would they want to leave you?
I think the other thing as well is when you start thinking about the people that are also having to carry the load while that role is open, their well-being and how they feel about the organization, that starts to kind of slowly go down. And so now you're not only looking for one person, you might be looking for 2, 3, 4, or a whole department, because during that time they've just not had the support that's been needed there and having to carry that workload. And I think a lot of people are experiencing that. I know I've experienced that during my career, where it's been such a lengthy time between us putting a position out into the marketplace and then getting somebody in. So by the time they get there, you're like, I'm done. You need to take all of this. I need 5 minutes.
Yeah, and that helped us never have a problem get mentors. So we started this whole tech mentor training program to start managing it from Fuel 50. But what we told people who weren't quite ready for promotion to team leader or people manager, that this was your next step. The quicker you get this guy up to speed, the quicker you can move up. It just opened up. Over 400 tech mentors just came out of the woodworks in 15 countries to give their time and expertise. And we get the best feedback from them. They put out of their own time. We don't even see an opportunity cost in billability with customers, because it's just things that they do over and above. Meanwhile, if instead you were waiting and they were waiting for somebody to be recruited while they're carrying that extra load, You're right. It's very demotivating.
Yeah, and I think as well when you've got kind of somebody that has been there a long time and is kind of just stepping into the shoes of somebody, you know, if a manager has left and they're kind of stepping into the shoes, it's even worse when suddenly they've been doing that for a year and then somebody just external comes in and goes, and now that team's kind of on the back foot because the new people leaders having to really learn so much about the organization and about how that team dynamic works as well. Yeah.
So a lot of what you've talked about there is that there's real value in investing in that build strategy. So where do you start when you're thinking about upskilling your workforce and you're taking that strategic approach? Where do you start, Dan?
That's the big question, isn't it? Where do you start? I think that was initially what drew me to Fuel 50 in the first place, was to just to understand your people and understand a lot about them at a deeper level, because then you can start to understand, well, where do we start? Because you could do a lot of things. So for me, it's about really understand what's the biggest value. And we're a low-cost organization, so everything we do, we have to justify, did it make a difference? So I think for me, it starts with really understand what the current landscape is. And that's what I'd recommend with anybody, is just start that. We've failed quite a few times as we've rolled it out and we've started to learn, and every assumption we've had turned out not to be true. As true as perhaps we thought it was. We're better. And it really helps do two things. I think it validates your intuition, but it also helps you know where to focus. And a business the size of Travelodge, that could be tens of thousands of pounds to be able to focus in the right area.
That's definitely been a theme of what we've heard. I've heard that from several of the speakers today. Just do something, start somewhere. You know, and I think Nick's analogy of the compass, if you've got the direction, every step you take is in the right direction, is making movement.
I would say start with your business strategy. Always. There is no, you know, we could have a great program on basket weaving and somebody would be highly skilled in that, but if your business doesn't need it, we are here for people's well-being and for people to be sticky to organizations and for people to feel part of something bigger. And in order to do that, we need to develop them and enhance their skills. But I think the overarching, the raison d'etre that we are in organizations is for organizations to thrive, and organizations have a purpose. And it's always bugged me about that this image that people have had about, you know, HR, L&D talent in these ivory towers. But it was true, because we aren't that commercially attached to where a business is going. The moment you know what your business strategy is, you know the clients they're targeting, you know the skills that are needed for the projects and the technologies that they're putting out to market, and then you'll know what it is that needs to be developed with your employees. So I think any talent agenda starts with business strategy. We have something in the academy that we put together. We call it 40-30-30. I don't know, it's like 70-20-10, but we made this up. So we put it in terms of a sales and a relationship thing. So you spend 40% of your time on new business. So getting new relationships within the organization, understanding what new things the organization is doing, looking at how you will pivot in new ways. You spend 30% of your time maintaining your relationships, making sure where things are ticking on steadily. For us, it's in managed services. You know, they knock, they pick up the call, they answer, they reply to client, goes ticking on steadily. What is it that people continuously need to be doing? Keep an eye on that attrition. And then the only 30% is then your actual delivery. And then that's what we spend on making sure cohorts happened and learning programs are delivered, and then people have their personal development plans and all of that. But that 40%, which is most of your time, is on learning your business and learning what's coming next. That's where you start a talent strategy, with your business strategy.
Nice. Well, we could keep talking amongst ourselves, but I'm really keen to give you guys the opportunity to ask our amazing panelists the questions that are burning for you.
Oh, steady.
Sorry, that was my chair.
Thank you, guys. That was really amazing to be a part of and listen into. I've got a question around one of the, obviously, as you guys know, business critical activities we do in our role is about succession. How you build that internal pipeline and that leadership and grow that leadership bench. I'm curious to know your approach in your organization. Where does succession planning sort of sit accountability wise, and are you guys doing anything really innovative or creative in that succession space?
So my role is slightly more a subset of the larger ecosystem. So I'll talk of it from my perspective. We get involved in workforce planning. We get involved in resourcing. We get involved in running workshops around what the gap's going to be at the next level. Have we got organization-wide succession planning in order? No, we're still 21 acquisitions, 3 years, figuring out who the managers, who the leaders, and what skills they are. And Karen, who's here, who's our global head of talent and learning, I don't envy her job at all. But it's something that we still connecting those dots.
I think for me, what's exciting where we are now is the kind of mobility tool set that's within the Fuel 50 side of things is, every time I go into a HR meeting and I go, we've got a few things to iron out, but once this is ready, look at what I'm going to be delivering to you. And they're like, what? So we don't have to sit and go through spreadsheets and, build out a PowerPoint and spend hours upon hours to then get in there, present it back, and then somebody asks you a question and say, I can't possibly answer that on the spot. I've got to go away and do it. Whereas I can walk into a room, open up my phone and go, yeah, this person's ready. That's so powerful when you start putting that in front of people. That's really going to help drive, how you have a more effective talent pipeline. And also what you were saying earlier about getting people ready for that next step, you're able to identify who those are. So again, it just makes that process of going, who's ready? Where are our skills? Where are our talents? It's a press of a button now. Yeah.
So I'm not sure it's necessarily innovative, but in terms of the scale, so for us, in terms of succession in the hotels, we were doing ad hoc bespoke programs at a manager level, and then doing a really quite effective team member and supervisor. So we've spent this year utilising the apprenticeship levy to have 4 stages of progression, and they're all fully aligned. So you can go on the program 4 times to each level. We were asked the other day, someone said, could they do it any quicker? And I said, well, let's go from team member to regional director in 4 years.
You really could go.
There might be one superstar that can do that, but actually that alignment between the levels so that your development is aligned to the roles. And in head office, we've started first with the leadership team, and we've used coaching against the whole person assessment model so that we're looking at how well can they focus, are they getting enough rest, are they taking care of their well-being just as much as what's the level of their cognitive agility, their strategic thinking. So probably just the answer I just said is understand first. Then when we do that succession planning piece, we've then got the solution already in motion. And then we can start to look as well as the people that are highly driven in their careers. How do we support them? Is it mentoring? Is it coaching? One of the slides I saw at one of these events that really resonated with me was that people are going to stay in their careers, same role longer, and those upward moves are going to be steeper. So I thought that probably there should have been the other way around. But I think if you do the development first, then you're giving people the opportunity to understand themselves when they're having those conversations about their career.
Nice.
So how?
Hi there. We talked briefly about the business strategy, which is great, and obviously we don't need everyone being a CEO. So how easy do you find it to try and steer people towards roles you've got in UC as build demand roles? That makes sense. So some roles are easy to buy, some roles are easy to build. How do you steer people towards learning things you want them to learn?
I think sometimes it's just opening up people's eyes to different opportunities. And I think you're almost relying on that kind of self-engagement. We were talking before about people kind of building their own journeys and what does that look like. I think those people that are super engaged are going to identify those opportunities and see where that fits into their kind of journey and what that progression looks like. So I think sometimes it can be really difficult to push people into those opportunities to grow and learn in a completely different domain. But I think as an organization, one of the things that we've been talking about is how do people make those big jumps wants, and how do we enable that? And I think, having the data that we've now got will help us kind of steer those conversations a bit more practically, especially because people are going to be going to, their people leaders and sitting down, having a conversation, say, hey, I'm really interested in going down this route. But because we've got that visibility and transparency of this role has these skills and capabilities, they're able to identify with, oh yeah, I really like doing that, or I like the idea of exploring that, and we can now enable it with the tools that we have.
We at Fuel 50, we have that challenge, but for a very different reason, in that we're a really small organization. And so we talk a lot to the team about this concept of a portfolio career and gaining experiences rather than roles, and moving through the organization. So I'm just trying to shift that mindset about what it means to have a career.
Hi, stand up because I'm hidden. I just wondered with the panel, with having so many thousands of people between you, and as you've rolled out for Fuel 50 and your talent experience programs, have you focused at all on social impact, on skills that are social impact focused? So not roles specifically, but enabling people to tell you when they want to actually be engaged in your social impact strategy?
Great question.
So the Academy is part of our annual, so we're a publicly listed company on the Swiss Stock Exchange, and the Academy is part of the company's ESG goals. We're also tied into the 17 sustainability goals of the UN. So whatever we build, where we source people from, who we develop, how we bring them in, and how we transition them, there are several stories of social impact embedded within that. We truly believe that learning can be good for an organization as well as good for a community. And there's a lot of stuff around that. Within the organization, mobility, social mobility comes from the opportunities that you give them once you've got them through the program and once you've deployed them. Because then once you are an employee, you're a SWOMI, you're Software One. It doesn't matter where you've come from, it's where you're going. But through mentoring, other people have the opportunity to be part of this story and this social impact within the company. And there are some incredible stories that have come through in the past 2 years of starting it. And in my 22 years in L&D, it still chokes me up to repeat some of them. But I think that answers your question, but we are tied in. We do report in the annual report every year on what we have done, not only to impact the organization in terms of a decrease in attrition, a decrease in time to competency, a reduction in the cost of the talent pipeline, and how many communities have we helped, and what's the impact we've had at a grassroots level.
Yeah, for me, I think the discussion is just going to begin. I think it's not something that we focused on as an organization previously, but we're starting these conversations around D&I and how that's influenced within our company. Our employee value proposition, how does that all tie together? And obviously we need to have levers and drivers within inside of our organization to enable those people to feel that they're engaged, that they're making a difference, that it's not just, work every day. It's, I'm making a difference within either my local community or a wider community. So for me, it's been really interesting hearing, different perspectives and different approaches, and certainly talking with, someone this morning that's what the whole organization does, is look at, how do you enable kind of looking at environmental impact of your organization and how that has a correlation to people being attracted to your company. I think that's going to be an interesting discussion over the coming months.
Our mission is to make a better travel lodge, and part of that is better for our future and the impact on our communities. Part of that is obviously the footprint of our properties in the community, but also our people as well. So we're part of the Purpose Coalition that's been looking at social mobility. What can we do with our career development programs to help do that? A big part of that is then getting the data to understand, are we making a difference? One of the best things we ever see that's posted on some of the social forums is everybody keeps their badges, and then when they make it to hotel manager, they post all the 6 badges that they got them up to that level. So it's really passionate for us. But also some of our e-learning, we've moved on from are we safe to trade, which obviously is really important, but we've done that at exceptional level. So now we're working with companies like Disability Positive to educate and inform our team members, not just for our customers, but we also create a caring and inclusive workplace as well. And our mission is absolutely our people pledge, is to help people have opportunities to learn more, earn more, and feel they can be their true self and belong at Travelodge. And that's a promise that we have to try and keep. So yeah, absolutely, that's my passion.
Can I just add one thing? Sorry. It is extremely easy for a learning organization or an L&D organization in a firm to go back and contribute to social impact, even a talent organization. I'll give you an example. There's a firm called One Tree Planted. It's $1 a tree. So what we said is everybody who comes through the Software One Academy or through talent acquisition, everybody who signs up as a mentor will plant a tree somewhere. $3,000, 3,000 trees redone for the Amazon rainforest and the wildfires in Australia. Look at the impact. It's so easy. What dent is that in your annual budget? There's small. We signed up to the UN Free and Equal campaign. It helps promote LGBTQ rights in Africa. Wonderful. How much does that cost us? Nothing. We just go on back to our employees, help them with the education, take that advocacy out, and then they add it to the narrative when they go out to charities to recruit kids from there. There's so much L&D can do and talent can do from a social impact standpoint that doesn't cost a lot and does so much for both the community as well as your employer branding.
Thank you. Before we end, I would love to hear, we've had a day full of inspiration, but what is on the top of your wish lists for 2023 when you think about talent in your own organizations? Do you want to kick us off, Dan?
Yeah, I've taken quite a lot of notes today. A lot of notes. But the thing that there were 2 things that really stuck out for me. That was the whole person for long-term well-being. So anything we do should have longevity. It's not just a sticky plaster. It's actually giving people tools that can really help them in the long term. And the skills architecture beyond reproach. That really interests me. Like, how do we work with our hotel colleagues to build a skills framework that doesn't just help you have a career at Travelodge, but actually raises the water level in hospitality itself, that then transitions the reputation of the industry and the roles. That's really interests me. Can we do that? So yeah, that's my ambition.
Sounds like a big year.
Yeah.
Craig?
So for us, we're kind of now looking at the kind of Gigs mentoring tool set that we can use with everyone. And I think Gigs is probably going to be the biggest enabler of people upskilling themselves, of being really engaged with what we're doing inside of the organization, but also open them up to, experiences elsewhere, and to also explore those skills that maybe they're not getting the opportunities to be part of. So I think that that's going to be really exciting to open that up. But again, I put a big caveat around that. We've got to put the processes in place. We've got to give the guidance so that people understand how to really use that tool effectively and not abuse it in a way that all of a sudden it just becomes a negative black hole. I think we've really got to talk to our managers about, this is something I've talked about on a few calls actually recently, is managers should really look at, the people leaders should really look at people that kind of come and join them as being loaned to them by the company, and they should then return them with interest. And that for me feels like a really easy statement for people to get hold of, and as a people leader to then go, yeah, actually what I need to do is really grow my team, grow my individuals, so that when they go to their next role, not only do they like me quite a lot as a people leader, but they've also got the skills and capabilities to really shine in the role that they step into.
Love that.
We've just finished budget cycle, so there's wish list and pipe dream. So you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. So I'm going to say that for us in the next year is getting our skills right. We haven't been able to leverage our talent platforms and indeed a lot of our frameworks, because our skills taxonomy, our competencies, our organization structures and models and everything in the background is not robust enough. The business changes at a rapid rate. We just integrated SAP into our offering. I knew that would come back to bite me one day. We now have to think of another whole skills taxonomy. We have to think about how a technology is different from a skill, and what does leadership mean in an organization in constant flux. So I think getting our frameworks and capabilities in taxonomy so we better use the systems that we are putting in place and investing in, I think that will be a big focus for next year.
Sounds like some hard yards ahead.
Oh, God.
It has been an absolute pleasure talking to
Thank
all
you.
three of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.